President of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, Dr. Debashis Mitra, Vice President, Mr. Aniket Talati, outgoing President of the International Federation of Accountants, Mr. Alan Johnson, incoming President, Ms. Asma Resmuki, members of the ICAI and IFSC, and my dear friends. I am deeply honored to have been invited to speak at the 21st World Congress of Accountants. The choice of India for the first time in the 118-year history of this event is a recognition of India's inevitable journey towards becoming an economic superpower. It reflects the rising tide of confidence of 1.4 billion Indians. It reflects the wind in the sails of the world's fastest growing economy. There could be no better manifestations of the scale of India's thinking than this magnificent Geo Convention Center showcasing this event. Magnificent Geo Convention Center showcasing this event. We all recognize that we are gathered here at a time of uncertainty. The intersections of the COVID pandemic, the war between Russia and Ukraine, the challenge posed by changing climate, the surging energy prices, and unprecedented accelerations in inflation have created a crisis for a global leadership. The contours of our international relations have fundamentally changed, and the aftertaste of globalization is not as flat as had been predicted. The fact is that several of our assumptions have been challenged, that the EU would stay together, that Russia would be forced to accept a reduced international role, that China should adopt Western democratic principles, that secular principles are universal in nature, and that a pandemic breakout would mean developed countries stepping in to help the developing world. Unfortunately, every single one of these beliefs has faltered. This multi-level crisis has shattered the myth of unipolar or a bipolar world of superpowers that could step in and stabilize global environments. Let us take an example. Yesterday in Egypt, the curtains came down on COP27. In 1992, when the world had come together to sign the international treaty on a climate change, the principle was stated as to enable economic development to proceed in a sustainable manner. However, the contributions expected from the developed nations have failed to come about, and the struggle to balance equitable growth with a limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius has fallen far short of expectations. This is just one example of stepping into a world where every nation makes its own decisions, and it will be increasingly hard to manage by economic might and command and control structures. Therefore, in my view, in this emerging multipolar world, superpowers will need to be those that take a responsibility to step in and help others in a crisis and not bully other nations into submissions. It will be those that keep humanity as their foremost operating principles. A superpower must also be a thriving democracy and yet believe that there is no one uniform style of democracy. It must be a nation willing to share its technology to enable social development, to address the universal challenges in education, healthcare, and a skill development. The style of capitalism that drives growth for the sake of growth and ignores the social fabric of a society is rightfully facing its greatest pushback ever. It is in such a multipolar world that the foundation of India's increasing economic might, coupled with its culture and beliefs, become relevant as it takes its journey to becoming an economic superpower. One that combines monetary growth with a vast social growth, all within the bounds of democratic society. It is in this context that I express my views. It is well documented that at the time of India's independence in 1947, the opinion was that Indian democracy would not survive. Not only did we survive, but India is now regarded as a role model for a peaceful transfer of power from one government to the next. Also, it is after more than 2 decades of a relatively short-term governments and coalitions that we have a government with a majority of its own. As expected, this has given our country the ability to initiate several structural reforms in the political and administrative systems and deliver public services, balancing a long-term view with a rapid executions. Let us take a look at some other enabling factors. Our democracy is now 75 years old. This is about the average lifespan of an Indian today. Within this period, India has seen a remarkable accelerations. It took us 58 years to get to our first $1 trillion of GDP, 12 years to get the next trillion, and just 5 years for the third trillion. Given the pace at which the government has been executing a vast multitude of a simultaneous social and economic reforms, I anticipate that within the next decade, India will start adding $1 trillion to its GDP every 12 to 18 months. And thereby putting us well on track to be a $30 trillion economy by 2050. And with our stock market capitalizations, that will be possibly exceed $45 trillion. To illustrate the relevance of these numbers, the United States today is a $23 trillion economy with a stock market capitalizations ranging from $45 to $50 trillion. While these absolute growth numbers for India will be greater than for any other nation between today and 2050, a nominal dollar-based GDP narrative still does not paint the real potential of India. The significance of the scale of any GDP expansion must be normalized in terms of a nation's purchasing power parity. In this context of PPP, India's share of a global GDP will be north of 20% by the year 2050. I would urge you to reflect on this incredible possibility as you think about India. A country crushed and drained by its colonial rulers today stand resilient on the cusp of extraordinary growth and is the only major country on a path to emerge as a high-income nation without compromising its democracy and diversity. Well before 2030, we will be the world's third largest economy and thereafter the world's second largest economy by 2050. India's success story of combining economic growth and democracy has no parallel. Now let me now talk about India I see in 2050 and outline a set of interconnected factors that establishes India's path forward. All of these factors will combine to make the next 3 decades the most defining period for the impact India will have on the world. The first dimension is our nation's demographic dividend, which will drive consumptions and accelerate the growth of a tax-paying society. India's median age will be just 38 years even in 2050. Over this period, till 2050, India's populations will grow by 15% to 1.6 billion, but the per capita income will accelerate by over 700% to approximate $16,000. The growth of this consuming middle class will drive an unprecedented surge in demand, which in turn will drive a surge in a private and a government expenditures, as well as attracts the highest level of foreign direct investment. In this ongoing year, India is expected to record a 15% increase and all-time high of over $100 billion of FDI. Such scale of investment lays the foundations for a significant job expansions. In fact, India's FDI inflows have increased over 20-fold since the year 2000, and I would expect it to touch $1 trillion by 2050. Nothing beats internal demand within a large economy to attract FDI, and there could be no better sign of the increasing global confidence in India. The second dimension is the pace of entrepreneurship that India is witnessing. Digitalization has accelerated this velocity, and a digitally enabled India is transforming every aspect of how India operates, lives, and consumes. In this context, the current world, entrepreneurship and digitalization are strongly linked and combined to create a dynamic, innovative environment. A digitalized India will also transform healthcare, education, and skill development and create a more equitable society. India's pace and adoption of digital technologies will create a massive new and innovative market spaces. I fundamentally believe that the next 3 decades will propel India to the forefront of entrepreneurship. This journey is already well on its way. Allow me to explain. In 2021, the pace of unicorn creation in India has been the fastest in the world. This will continue, and for every unicorn that rises, we will see the birth of dozens of micro unicorns. In 2021, India added a unicorn every 9 days. It executed the largest number of real-time financial transactions globally, a staggering 48 billion. This was 6 times greater than the US, Canada, France, and Germany combined. All of this has laid a base for the 4th industrial revolutions, where humans and machines are all interconnected, to be then followed by the AI and Web 3.0 revolutions, where the physical and digital world start fusing. I expect that just like India's internal demand leading to a surge in FDI, the number of startups being created will lead to a surge in venture capital investments. VC funding in India first crossed $1 billion in 2015. This year, VC funding will exceed $50 billion, and this is just 50x acceleration in just 8 years. India stands as the foremost example of how a smartphone and an inexpensive data powered by aspirations can create the jobs and transform a nation. The third dimension that will prove to be a powerful transformation lever for India is in the space of our energy transitions. Energy poverty is today developing world's greatest challenge, and this gap will need to be mostly filled with a renewable energy. While India currently ranks third in the Renewable Energy Attractive Index and is the world's third largest energy consuming country, there is little doubt that India's energy transitions will be unparalleled as it races to meet its energy needs. By 2050, India will need 400% more units of energy than it currently consumes. While this may seem challenging, the technology advancement that we are seeing is expected to make this possible. Given the dramatic and continued drop in the cost of renewable energy, especially solar power, the marginal cost of green power is headed to zero. The ability of this zero-cost electron to economically split a water molecule and create 100% green hydrogen in the future is now certain. The combination of a solar and wind power coupled with the green hydrogen opens up unprecedented possibility for India. I would go as far as to state that the revolution in alternative energy technologies opens up the possibility that by 2050, India can become a net green energy exporter. This will also enable decentralized power generations required to accelerate the micro-sizing of any process. It will enable entrepreneurship opportunities across micro-manufacturing, micro-agriculture, micro-banking, micro-healthcare, micro-education, everything that India's rural populations needs for its development. Cooling the planet down will be one of the most profitable business and the largest of job creator over the next several decades. I am in no doubt that India will lead the global energy transitions. This is why the Adani Group is making a massive investment in driving not just India's, but the global energy transitions. Over the next decade, we will invest over $70 billion in this space and build the world's most integrated renewable energy value chain. There can be no greater sign of my confidence in the India's growth story. Along with my optimisms, I do recognize that lot of still needs to be done as the economy grows. What we cannot afford to do is fall into the classic two-speed nation trap where the top half of the society grows prosperous and the bottom half remains poor. Therefore, our wealth creations must focus on both quantitative factors related to per capita GDP and qualitative factors that include education, skills, and healthcare. As both domestic companies and multinationals take advantage of India's market size, we will need stronger mandates wherein corporates are compelled to rise to the challenge of enabling a social structure that recognizes the core of our culture and is aligned with our national needs. India cannot be just seen as a land for making and taking profits out of its geographic boundaries. This is why I said at the start that the superpowers in the multipolar world must recognize there is no one size of democracy that fits for all, and the aftertaste of globalization is not as flat as was predicted. We are at the World Accounting Congress, and so let me now briefly touch upon my views about the future of these professions. I fully buy into the view that India will continue its journey to become the largest hub for offshore accounting services and further increases its share of the global knowledge process outsourcing market. Advancement in a cloud-based artificial intelligence, distributed computing, and cyber technologies make this far easier. I foresee some of the domestic companies taking full advantage of this massive possibility given the inherent strength of our cost and efficiencies equations. However, in my view, given the understanding of financial intelligence, budgets, and quantitative and technical acumen accountants bring to the table, I believe that some of the smartest CEOs and service heads should also come from the accounting professions. This is what I would ask accounting professionals to aspire and inspire the younger generation of accountants that follows you. My dear friends, let me close by saying that if there ever were a time to be Indian, be in India, and associate with India, it is now. The foundation to build a new resilient India has already been laid. We will be an India that taps into our own markets to help it become self-reliant. An India with a democratic system that is based on dignity and equality. An India that has the courage to aspire. An India that is responsible power and are strong at its border. The policies that have been put in place have allowed our nation to make a tremendous progress over the last decade and put us firmly on the path to become an Atmanirbhar or self-reliant India, a self-reliant society that is 100% literate, 100% healthy, and 100% vocationally trained, and most importantly, a self-reliant India that has forever eliminated poverty, all achieved well before 2050. This is what being a superpower should be all about. I hope you share my bullishness about India. Thank you and Jai Hind.